It was a quiet Sunday morning, one of those slow, coffee-sipping days where the only sound in the house was the creak of old floorboards and the wind brushing leaves outside. I walked to the study, barefoot, half humming an old Merle Haggard song, and reached for the safe behind the bookshelf. Not for anything big, just to pull out a photo of Mary, my late wife, that I kept in a little leather pouch next to her wedding ring. But when I turned the dial, nothing. No click, no give. I tried again, slower this time, frowning. I knew that code like my own name. Still nothing. That's when my stomach dropped. 3 hours and one locksmith later, I stood staring at an empty metal box. Every document, every photo, the backup USB with the family trust details, my will, gone. The ring, too. I didn't say a word, just stood there, hands trembling like I'd just been told Mary had died all over again. I didn't want to believe it, but I already knew who did it. Her name is Lindsay, my daughter, my only daughter. 35 years old, grew up with her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. She used to follow me around the garage like a shadow, asking me how engines worked, why nails were flat on one end. And now here I was, robbed by the same little girl who once wrote me a birthday card that said, "You're my hero, Dad." I gave her everything, paid for her schooling, co-signed her first mortgage. When her husband Clay walked out and left her with 2 toddlers and a car full of debt, I was the one who stepped in. Paid her bills, bought diapers, let her move in with me just for a while. That while turned into 2 years. 2 years of watching her grow colder, harder, more entitled. She'd been asking about the safe for weeks now, casually at first. What kind of code does that thing use? Then more direct. Shouldn't we update the documents in there, Dad? I always brushed her off. Told her not to worry, that everything was handled. Turns out I should have worried. She'd waited until I was at the VA clinic for a follow-up. Called a locksmith herself. Probably told him she was taking care of her aging father. Said she was authorized. That's the thing about family. When they betray you, they do it in your own house, with your own name. And still, I didn't yell. I didn't confront her that night, even when she smiled at me from across the dinner table, asking if the stew needed more salt. No, I just nodded and sipped my water, because what I felt wasn't anger anymore. It was something sharper. Cold, deliberate. The next morning I went to the phone store and removed her number from the family plan. Petty? Maybe, but it was symbolic. I was cutting the cord. She locked me out of what mattered to me most. My memories, my wife's ring, the very proof that I existed as a man with a past. So I locked her out of comfort, and now I'm talking to a lawyer. Because I know what she's after. It's not just the safe, it's the trust, the house. Everything I spent 40 years building with my hands and my back. She wants it now, wants to claim I'm slipping, wants to say I'm not capable of managing things anymore. She thinks she's one step ahead. But she doesn't know who taught her how to play this game. And the courtroom will be the only place she'll hear my voice from now on. Next chapter. I'll tell you what I found in the search history on her iPad the night after the safe went missing, because that was the moment I stopped being heartbroken and started preparing for war. It was a quiet Sunday morning, one of those slow, coffee-sipping days where the only sound in the house was the creak of old floorboards and the wind brushing leaves outside. I walked to the study, barefoot, half humming an old Merle Haggard song, and reached for the safe behind the bookshelf. Not for anything big, just to pull out a photo of Mary, my late wife, that I kept in a little leather pouch next to her wedding ring. But when I turned the dial, nothing. No click, no give. I tried again, slower this time, frowning. I knew that code like my own name. Still nothing. That's when my stomach dropped. 3 hours and one locksmith later, I stood staring at an empty metal box. Every document, every photo, the backup USB with the family trust details, my will, gone. The ring, too. I didn't say a word, just stood there, hands trembling like I'd just been told Mary had died all over again. I didn't want to believe it, but I already knew who did it. Her name is Lindsay, my daughter, my only daughter. 35 years old, grew up with her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. She used to follow me around the garage like a shadow, asking me how engines worked, why nails were flat on one end. And now here I was, robbed by the same little girl who once wrote me a birthday card that said, "You're my hero, Dad." I gave her everything, paid for her schooling, co-signed her first mortgage. When her husband, Clay, walked out and left her with 2 toddlers and a car full of debt, I was the one who stepped in, paid her bills, bought diapers, let her move in with me just for a while. That while turned into 2 years. 2 years of watching her grow colder, harder, more entitled. She'd been asking about the safe for weeks now, casually at first. "What kind of code does that thing use?" Then more direct. "Shouldn't we update the documents in there, Dad?" I always brushed her off, told her not to worry, that everything was handled. Turns out, I should have worried. She'd waited until I was at the VA clinic for a follow-up, called a locksmith herself, probably told him she was taking care of her aging father, said she was authorized. That's the thing about family. When they betray you, they do it in your own house, with your own name. And still, I didn't yell. I didn't confront her that night. Even when she smiled at me from across the dinner table, asking if the stew needed more salt. No, I just nodded and sipped my water, because what I felt wasn't anger anymore. It was something sharper, cold, deliberate. The next morning I went to the phone store and removed her number from the family plan. Petty? Maybe, but it was symbolic. I was cutting the cord. She locked me out of what mattered to me most, my memories, my wife's ring, the very proof that I existed as a man with a past. So I locked her out of comfort. And now I'm talking to a lawyer. Because I know what she's after. It's not just the safe, it's the trust, the house. Everything I spent 40 years building with my hands and my back. She wants it now. Wants to claim I'm slipping. Wants to say I'm not capable of managing things anymore. She thinks she's one step ahead. But she doesn't know who taught her how to play this game, and the courtroom will be the only place she'll hear my voice from now on. It was a quiet Sunday morning, one of those slow, coffee-sipping days where the only sound in the house was the creak of old floorboards and the wind brushing leaves outside. I walked to the study, barefoot, half humming an old Merle Haggard song, and reached for the safe behind the bookshelf. Not for anything big, just to pull out a photo of Mary, my late wife, that I kept in a little leather pouch next to her wedding ring. But when I turned the dial, nothing. No click, no give. I tried again, slower this time, frowning. I knew that code like my own name. Still nothing. That's when my stomach dropped. 3 hours and one locksmith later, I stood staring at an empty metal box. Every document, every photo, the backup USB with the family trust details, my will, gone. The ring, too. I didn't say a word. Just stood there, hands trembling like I'd just been told Mary had died all over again. I didn't want to believe it. But I already knew who did it. Her name is Lindsay, my daughter, my only daughter, 35 years old, grew up with her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. She used to follow me around the garage like a shadow, asking me how engines worked, why nails were flat on one end. And now, here I was, robbed by the same little girl who once wrote me a birthday card that said, "You're my hero, Dad." I gave her everything, paid for her schooling, co-signed her first mortgage. When her husband Clay walked out and left her with 2 toddlers and a car full of debt, I was the one who stepped in, paid her bills, bought diapers, let her move in with me just for a while. That while turned into 2 years. 2 years of watching her grow colder, harder, more entitled. She'd been asking about the safe for weeks now, casually at first. "What kind of code does that thing use?" Then more direct. "Shouldn't we update the documents in there, Dad?" I always brushed her off, told her not to worry, that everything was handled. Turns out I should have worried. She'd waited until I was at the VA clinic for a follow-up, called a locksmith herself, probably told him she was taking care of her aging father, said she was authorized. That's the thing about family. When they betray you, they do it in your own house, with your own name. And still, I didn't yell. I didn't confront her that night, even when she smiled at me from across the dinner table, asking if the stew needed more salt. No, I just nodded and sipped my water, because what I felt wasn't anger anymore. It was something sharper, cold, deliberate. The next morning, I went to the phone store and removed her number from the family plan. Petty, maybe, but it was symbolic. I was cutting the cord. She locked me out of what mattered to me most, my memories, my wife's ring, the very proof that I existed as a man with a past. So I locked her out of comfort. And now I'm talking to a lawyer. Because I know what she's after. It's not just the safe. It's the trust, the house. Everything I spent 40 years building with my hands and my back. She wants it now, wants to claim I'm slipping, wants to say I'm not capable of managing things anymore. She thinks she's one step ahead. But she doesn't know who taught her how to play this game, and the courtroom will be the only place she'll hear my voice from now on. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there in the recliner in the den, staring out the window like Mary used to when she was anxious about the kids. I didn't cry. I don't do that much anymore. But my throat burned like I wanted to. By sunrise, the house smelled like burnt coffee and old regret. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a mug, and saw it sitting there on the counter like nothing had happened. Lindsay's iPad. She must have left it charging overnight. No password. She never thought she needed one, not from me at least. It's funny what people say with their search history. It's a confession in clicks. I opened the browser. First tab, how to claim power of attorney for a parent. My heart thudded. Next, does POA allow access to safe deposit box? Then, elderly incompetence, legal definition, Oklahoma. There were more. Articles about contesting wills, YouTube videos with smiling lawyers giving tips on navigating complex family estates, and one that made my hand go numb as I read the title. Can a child sue a parent for mismanagement of family assets? I set the iPad down slowly, like it might explode. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't worried. She was laying groundwork, building a case. I thought about all the small moments that didn't feel right over the past year. The way she'd started sitting in on my phone calls with the bank. How she offered to help when I logged into my retirement account. Her sudden interest in the house deed. In the family trust documents Mary and I signed back in 2004. And all this while living under my roof, eating food I paid for, letting her kids call me Papa like everything was fine. I spent the rest of that morning going through my filing cabinet. Not the safe, the cabinet under the stairs where I keep paper copies of everything, just in case. That's where I found the original trust documents, my signature, Mary's too, It was still valid, still intact. Lindsay wasn't a beneficiary, not yet. Mary always said we should wait until she matured a bit. I guess we never got around to revisiting that. Around noon, I heard Lindsay come downstairs. She padded into the kitchen in her house slippers, poured herself a coffee like it was any other day. Her voice was light, breezy. "Morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" I didn't answer, just nodded, staring at her over the rim of my mug, and she smiled, a tight-lipped, hollow little thing that said everything I needed to know. She knew I knew, but she didn't care, because in her mind, she'd already won. That afternoon, I called a lawyer, not some billboard guy. I called Clifford Watts. He's 72, still practicing. We served on the zoning board together in '99. He's sharp, discreet, and doesn't ask dumb questions. I told him everything, the safe, the documents, the search history. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he let out a long breath. "You're going to need to move quickly, Frank," he said. "She's not just poking around. She's setting you up for a capacity claim." "What do I do?" I asked. "You show her you're still the one in control." That night, while Lindsay was out at the grocery store, I printed a single-page statement, taped it to the inside of the safe. It said, "Nice try, but you forgot who taught you to think. Dad." Because I might be 67, and I might walk a little slower these days. But I still know a thief when I raise one. She found the note around noon. I was in the backyard, trimming the hedges. Not because they needed it, but because I needed to think about what to do next, about whether a man can mourn a daughter while still preparing to bury her in court. I heard the screen door slap shut, then footsteps in the hall, fast ones, a pause, then a thump, the safe door swinging open. She stayed in there for a while, no yelling, no cursing, just quiet. But when she left the study, her steps were heavy. Her face, when she passed me in the hallway, was flat. She didn't speak, just brushed by, like I was the wind. A few hours later, I was back inside, sitting in the recliner with the TV off, pretending to read. She must have thought I was asleep. She passed the living room with her phone to her ear and slipped into the kitchen. "Hey," she whispered. "Yeah, he knows." A pause. "No, I don't think he's going to let it go." My eyes stayed closed, but every word carved deeper. "I can't wait around, Ron. I need to move this up. If he rewrites the trust, I'm screwed." So there it was. Ron. A name I hadn't heard before. Not her ex, not a family friend, just Ron. She kept talking, voice lower now, but I caught the key phrase. "If we file next month, we can make a case for diminished capacity. He's been acting erratic. I can start recording conversations. He talks to himself all the time. It's not a stretch." My breath caught in my chest. She wasn't just gambling. She was planning to destroy my credibility, my mind. I waited until she went upstairs. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the framed picture on the wall. It was Mary and me. Christmas, 1996. She was laughing, head tilted back, her hand on my chest like she always did when she was proud of me. She would have known what to do, but she wasn't here anymore, and I was. So I made a choice. The next morning I made 3 phone calls, one to Clifford asking him to move forward with a full psychiatric evaluation, voluntary, by a state-licensed elder care specialist. The second to my doctor to schedule a physical, and the third to a notary public to come witness a document I was about to revise. I sat down at the dining room table and rewrote my will, by hand, I excluded Lindsay entirely, not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. I designated my grandson, Theo, her oldest, only 9 years old, as the future beneficiary of the trust, with my neighbor Harold as co-trustee until Theo turned 21. I added a clause stating that any attempt to interfere with my estate or capacity would result in immediate disinheritance. The notary arrived at 1:30. Harold was already there, sipping weak coffee and asking if he could bring his own mug next time. We all signed, witnessed, dated, sealed. By 2:00 p.m., it was legal. I made copies and gave one to Clifford for safekeeping. Another I mailed to myself, sealed and dated, for legal proof of authorship. That evening, I sat in the same recliner, holding the last copy in my lap. Upstairs, I heard Lindsay's voice through the floorboards. She was laughing at something. Light, careless, like everything was still in her hands. But it wasn't. Because I might have raised her. But she was about to meet the version of me that Mary always warned the world not to underestimate. It was a Wednesday when I invited her to dinner. Nothing fancy, just my meatloaf, mashed potatoes, the kind of food that fills the belly even when the heart is empty. She came downstairs in a cardigan, hair pulled back like she was walking into a PTA meeting. I told her to sit. We ate in silence for a few minutes. She scrolled her phone. I let her. I chewed, slow and steady, waiting for the moment when her guard was low enough to slip the truth under her skin. "You know," I said, setting my fork down, "Mary always believed we teach our kids everything except how to unlove us." She didn't look up. "I found your browser history," I continued, soft as the mashed potatoes on our plates. "And I heard the phone call, the one about diminished capacity, the recordings you were planning to make." Her eyes lifted, just barely, but her mouth stayed closed. "You've been planning this for a while," I said, "and you were hoping I'd stay quiet long enough for you to finish the story without me in it." She finally spoke. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "I understand that you want what's not yours, that you think your father's love comes with a price tag, and that somewhere along the line you mistook patience for weakness." She blinked hard. "It's not like that. You've been different lately. You forget things, you talk to yourself. I was worried." "You're lying," I said flatly, "and you're not very good at it." That stung her. I could see it. She shifted in her chair like the room got smaller. "I've already had a mental health evaluation. Voluntary, clean, no signs of cognitive decline." She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "I've also updated the trust. You're no longer in it." She stood up now, her voice rising a notch. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, louder than I meant to. And I did. Her face twisted. For a moment I saw the little girl again, the one who used to cry when I left for night shifts, who once begged me not to sell the old doghouse in the backyard because it was where she kept secrets. I looked away before it softened me. "You have every right to be angry at me, Lindsay, for the things I didn't give, for the times I wasn't enough, but you don't get to erase me." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a second I wondered if the war might end right there, but she blinked them away. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "I'm your daughter." "No," I replied. "You're someone who used to be my daughter. The moment you picked money over memory, over truth, over your own father's sanity, you became something else." She stormed out. The front door slammed so hard the glass rattled in its frame. I stayed at the table, ate the last bite of meatloaf, finished my water, because this wasn't about drama, it was about survival. The next day I checked the mail like I always do, but this time there was an envelope from my bank. Inside, a notification. A routine inquiry had been made about changes to my trust account. Not by me, not by my lawyer, by someone named Lindsay Delaney. They flagged it, sent me a courtesy notice because I'd pre-authorized alerts on unusual activity just last week, at Clifford's suggestion. Strike one. By noon, Clifford called. "Frank," he said, calm but firm, "you may want to prepare for a visit." "From who?" He sighed. "A court liaison, social services, possibly even a capacity evaluator. She's filed a concerned family member alert with the probate office. Claims you're behaving erratically. They're reviewing." Strike two. And still I wasn't surprised, because I'd already filed my own affidavit, complete with notarized statements, a full neuropsych eval, and a letter from Dr. Hensley, my GP of 20 years. I even included the name of my neighbor Harold as a daily witness to my behavior. Clifford said it was overkill. I said, "Good." By late afternoon, Lindsay hadn't come home, but I knew where she was. The courthouse. There's a woman named Doreen who works in family filings. Used to go to church with Mary and me. She called me on her lunch break. "She showed up with a folder," Doreen said. "Looked nervous. Asked if it was possible to submit a guardianship inquiry before a doctor signs off." I didn't say anything, just listened. "She was fumbling," Doreen added. "Said something about her dad slipping, forgetting things. I told her it was possible, but she'd need proof and full cooperation." What did she say to that? She got quiet, then asked for the name of a lawyer who could speed things up. Strike three. When I hung up, I walked to my study, opened the cabinet, took out the final document I hadn't touched yet, my emergency instructions packet. It was something Mary and I wrote together before she passed, a detailed handwritten note about what to do if we were ever incapacitated, who to call, where the deeds were, who we trusted. I'd updated it just last week, too. Removed Lindsay's name, added my own signature again. One stroke stronger than the last. Everything she tried to take, I'd already locked behind a wall of ink, witnesses, and timestamps. And here's the cruel beauty of it all. In trying to make me look weak, she made me bulletproof, because no one questions a man who prepares better than his accuser. Her name was Ms. Talbot. She arrived on a Thursday morning, wearing a state badge and a calm expression that looked practiced, clipboard tucked under her arm. Hair pulled back tight like a woman used to courtrooms and difficult conversations. "Mr. Delaney," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for agreeing to this visit." I shook it. Firm grip, steady eye contact. "Come on in," I said. "Coffee's fresh." We sat in the den. I had Harold already there, pretending to be reading the newspaper, but really just being a warm body. Witnesses matter, even if you don't need them. Ms. Talbot opened her folder. "I'm here following a family inquiry," she began. "It's standard procedure. Nothing's been filed formally, but the state takes these things seriously." "I understand," I said. "You'll find everything you need in that envelope on the table." She blinked. I had prepped it the night before. Full medical clearance from Dr. Hensley, clean neuropsych report from Dr. Bramley, notarized will, trust amendments, and a dated, signed statement asserting I had no intention of relinquishing control over my personal or financial decisions. She flipped through the pages slowly. No rush. That's when I knew I'd won this round. "I appreciate your cooperation," she said. I nodded. "Would you like to see the safe?" That surprised her. I led her to the study, opened it with ease, and showed her what I'd restocked it with. My passport, Mary's ring, the deed to the house, a flash drive with all legal documents backed up. She didn't say much, just scribbled something on her clipboard. "Mr. Delaney," she finally said, "Do you know why your daughter made this request?" I looked her in the eye. "Because when people want to steal from you and can't, they try to make you disappear instead." She paused, closed the folder. "Thank you for your time. I don't anticipate needing a follow-up." I walked her to the door. She stopped on the porch. "Sir," she added, voice lower now, more personal, "my father's 71. I wish he was as sharp as you." Then she left. I stood on the porch as her car rolled away, the autumn wind brushing my sleeves. Harold came up beside me with a slow clap and a grin. "Hell of a performance," he said. "No performance," I replied. "Just memory and preparation." Because this wasn't about proving anything to the state. It was about proving something to myself. That I was still here, still capable, still a father. She found out the next evening. I was sitting in the kitchen, peeling an apple with my old pocket knife when I heard the garage door slam. Not close. Slam. The kind of sound that carries more than weight. It carried fury. She didn't say anything at first, just stormed into the kitchen, eyes red, chest heaving. "You reported me?" I looked at her. Calm. "No." I protected myself. She slapped a folder down on the table. The same folder Ms. Talbot had carried. She must have gotten wind of the report, probably tried to follow up, only to be told, gently and officially, that the case was closed. "You made me look like a crazy person," she said, louder now, "like I was trying to hurt you." I set the apple down. "No, Lindsay, you did that all by yourself." She paced like a storm, back and forth, arms swinging, words tumbling out in a voice I barely recognized. "I was trying to make sure things were handled, trying to protect the family, the estate, the kids. You're not going to live forever, Dad." "Neither are you," I said. She froze, and for a second I saw something behind her eyes. Panic. Not because I'd scared her, but because I wasn't flinching. "You locked me out of the phone plan," she snapped. "That was personal," I replied. "Symbolic. You think you're proving something, but all you're doing is pushing away the only family you have left." I shook my head. "No, I'm protecting what's left of this family from someone who forgot what family means." She sat down then, suddenly, hard, like her legs had given out, and the anger shifted. Now she looked hollow. "They're going to leave me, you know," she whispered. "Theo's father, the bills. I'm drowning. I thought if I could just get ahead, if I could just secure something, maybe things would finally stop slipping." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about greed, not entirely. It was about desperation, about a woman who'd built her identity on control, only to find herself falling through cracks no one else could see. But that didn't excuse what she did. "I would have helped you, Lindsay," I said quietly. "You didn't have to steal." "You always made me feel small," she said, "like I didn't know enough, like I couldn't handle things." "I made you feel safe," I corrected. "But safety isn't the same as weakness." She didn't reply, just stared at the floor. I didn't offer comfort, not this time, because some lessons can't be softened. Some truths have to hit hard, or they don't stick. She got up after a few minutes and left. No slamming this time, just the click of the door, and then silence. And that night, for the first time since this began, I cried, not for what she did, but for what we lost. Because somewhere between the diapers and the diplomas, the bedtime stories and the slammed doors, I'd stopped being her father in her eyes and started being a target. The next morning I brewed coffee and opened the living room curtains, letting in the autumn light. It felt like the house could breathe again. Lindsay didn't come downstairs. Her car was gone before dawn. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. Because something had shifted inside me. I wasn't waiting anymore. By 9:00 a.m., I was at Clifford's office, will and trust documents in hand. I want to restructure everything, I told him. Not out of spite, out of clarity. He nodded. Didn't ask questions, just brought out the forms. We spent 3 hours reviewing every detail. Beneficiaries, clauses, contingencies. I removed Lindsay from every document, not to punish, but to draw a boundary that could no longer be crossed. Instead, I created a new clause, a legacy account for each grandchild. Education funds locked until they turned 21. Administered by Clifford's firm and Harold, my neighbor, as co-trustees. I added a letter to each of them, Theo and Maisie, sealed in envelopes. They'll open them one day, long after I'm gone. Each letter begins the same. I couldn't stop your mother's choices, but I could protect you from their consequences. I added another clause to the trust, one Mary would have smiled at, a monthly stipend for the church pantry she used to volunteer at. In her name. Always in her name. I also included a small fund to fix the local park's broken benches. That's where we used to sit every Sunday after church, feeding breadcrumbs to the birds. And then, one last thing. A condition. If at any point Lindsay attempted to reverse or contest the trust, all funds would be frozen indefinitely until the court resolved the issue, with no guarantee of reinstatement. It was a firewall, not against her hunger, but against her entitlement. When we finished, Clifford looked over the stack of papers and said, "This is clean, Frank. Ironclad." "Good," I said, "because this isn't about dying. It's about finishing." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That night I sat on the porch and watched the sun melt behind the trees. The air smelled like wet leaves and firewood. The kind of evening that makes a man think about all the versions of himself he's been. The young father, the widower, the old man who people thought had nothing left. Turns out, I had one thing left. Choice. It came just after midnight. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I didn't answer. Let it roll to voicemail. I laid there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house, the soft hum of the fridge downstairs, the creak of old floorboards. It wasn't until morning that I played it. Her voice was shaky, slurred like she'd had a glass of wine too many, or maybe just the weight of too many regrets pressing on her chest. "Dad, it's me." A long pause. "I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I messed up. I did things I can't even explain to myself anymore." Another pause. I could hear her sniffle. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I swear. I was scared. Everything was falling apart and I just needed something solid. I thought maybe if I could just get control of things, I could fix it." My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I didn't press it. "I know I broke something," she whispered. "I don't even know if I can fix it. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I miss Mom. I miss the way things used to be, before everything got so complicated." She didn't say goodbye. Just a long breath, and then silence. I sat with that silence for a long time. Not angry, just tired. Because there's a special kind of ache that only parents know. The ache of watching your child fall, and knowing you can't, or shouldn't, catch them this time. I didn't call her back. Not out of vengeance. But because I knew what that call would become, another round of tears, promises, guilt, and maybe even manipulation wrapped in apology. I couldn't go back there, not now. Instead, I walked to the backyard and trimmed the hedge Mary planted, the one she said would outlive us both. I ran my fingers through the leaves, remembering her hands, the way she used to hum to herself while gardening. I whispered to the hedge like a fool. She called Mary, said she missed you. The wind didn't answer, but something in me softened, because even if the road back to forgiveness was long and maybe impossible, I could still grieve what once was, and I could still choose what comes next. He showed up on a Saturday morning, still in his pajamas, blue flannel with little astronauts on them, hair a mess. Backpack slung over one shoulder like he'd been on a mission. I opened the door, surprised. "Theo?" "Hi, Papa," he said, sheepish. "Mom said I could come. She's on a call." I stepped aside. "You walked here?" He shrugged. "Just from the house. I wanted to ask you something." I nodded toward the kitchen. "You want cereal?" He shook his head. "No, I'm okay." We sat at the table. His legs didn't quite reach the floor. He pulled something from his backpack, a crayon drawing of a house. Our house. Mine. "Is this still yours?" he asked, small voice, eyes down. That one got me. I cleared my throat. "Yes, buddy, still mine." He looked relieved. "Mom said you might move away." I forced a smile. "Not yet. Still got too many things to fix around here." He hesitated, then, "Did you and Mom have a fight?" I sighed. "Sort of." "Because of money?" I nodded. "Among other things." He sat with that a minute, then looked up. "Is it my fault?" My heart dropped. I leaned in. "No. Theo, no. None of this is your fault. You're the best thing your mom ever gave me." He didn't smile, just looked at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle too big for his age. "I just want everyone to be happy," he said, "like it used to be." I reached across the table, held his small hand in mine. Sometimes people get confused about what makes them happy. They think it's stuff, money, houses, control. But happiness doesn't come from having everything. It comes from knowing who you are. He nodded slowly. "Do you know who you are, Theo?" He thought for a second. "I'm your grandson." "Darn right," I said, "and that means something." He smiled then. Not big, but enough. We spent the rest of the morning in the garage, fixing an old birdhouse. He handed me nails, held the hammer with both hands, asked a million questions. I let him talk, let him be a boy. Because while his mother was busy trying to inherit something not meant for her, this boy was inheriting everything that mattered. She pulled into the driveway a little after noon. Didn't text first, didn't knock, just opened the car door and stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding whatever she couldn't say. Theo was still in the garage, brushing paint on the birdhouse with the kind of focus only kids can summon. I wiped my hands and walked out to meet her. "Hey," she said flatly. "Hey." A long silence. "How long's he been here?" "Couple hours. We fixed up the old birdhouse." She nodded, eyes scanning the porch like it might tell her more than I would. "I didn't know he was coming," I added, "but I'm glad he did." She nodded again. "He said you talked about things." I waited. "You still mad?" she asked. "No." That caught her off guard. Her eyebrows twitched behind the sunglasses. "I'm not mad, Lindsay," I continued. "I'm done. There's a difference." She looked away. I stepped down off the porch, kept my voice even. "I don't wish you harm. I'm not trying to punish you. But I won't be manipulated. Not by anyone. Not even you." She didn't respond. "I changed the trust," I said. "It's final." Her jaw tightened. I figured, but I made sure Theo and Maisie are taken care of. Another silence. She shifted, uncomfortable, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. I didn't know how to stop, she said finally. Once I started, it felt like I had to see it through. I know. Her sunglasses came off. Her eyes were red. Not from crying, at least not now. More like she hadn't slept much. You think I'm a monster, she said. No, I replied. I think you're lost. She blinked. And I hope you find your way back, I added. But I can't follow you there. That's when Theo came running out, birdhouse in both hands, smiling. Mom, look what we made. She crouched and took it, managing a small smile. It's beautiful, baby. He hugged me goodbye, tight. The kind of hug that says, I see you. I still trust you. And as they drove away, Lindsay looked at me in the mirror. I didn't wave, because this wasn't a goodbye. It was just enough. It came in a plain manila envelope. No drama. No knock on the door, just the soft thud of it hitting the floor near the mail slot. I bent down, picked it up, turned it over in my hands. State of Oklahoma, Probate Division. Inside, a stamped copy of the final trust documents. Registered, reviewed, uncontested. Clifford had filed everything perfectly. The notarized affidavits, the evaluations, the video statement I recorded, sitting right there in the den, wearing my old flannel shirt and speaking as clearly as I ever have in my life. All of it was done. I sat down in the same chair Mary used to read in, ran my fingers over the embossed seal, and for the first time in weeks I exhaled all the way. It was over. No hearings, no challenges, no appeals. Lindsay hadn't contested, not because she agreed, but because she knew she'd lose, and the mountain of evidence I'd built left her nowhere to climb, but victory doesn't always feel like winning. It felt quiet, like coming home after a long, cold walk and realizing the fire's gone out, but you're too tired to relight it. I placed the documents in the safe, locked it, didn't tape any more notes inside. There was nothing left to say. That night, I poured a single glass of bourbon and sat on the back porch under the October sky. The wind had a bite to it, but I let it wrap around me. I thought of Mary, how proud she'd be. I thought of Theo, how one day he'd read my letter and maybe understand why all of this mattered. And yes, I thought of Lindsay. I thought about the years I carried her on my shoulders, her hands in my hair, the teenage fights, the wedding toast I gave, the night she called sobbing when Clay left her. And I thought of now, the woman she'd become. There's a grief in seeing your child become a stranger, but there's also peace in knowing you didn't let the stranger steal what was meant for the future. Thanksgiving used to be Mary's favorite. She'd wake up at dawn, start the rolls, hum that old Patsy Cline song while basting the turkey. The house always smelled like butter and sage by 10 a.m. And laughter. Always laughter. This year, the house was quieter. Not sad. Just quieter. Maisie and Theo were already in the living room watching the parade when Harold knocked on the door with a pie and his usual "hope this isn't poisoned" joke. My sister June flew in from Amarillo. My cousin Reese brought his new girlfriend, who kept calling stuffing dressing and nearly caused a debate. The table was full, except for one chair. We didn't talk about it, didn't mention Lindsay's name, not out of spite, but because we all knew saying it would deflate the room. Theo sat beside me, still clutching the birdhouse we'd painted. He set it next to his plate like a totem. I said grace, hands folded, voice steady. Thank you for the ones gathered, for the ones remembered, and for the ones we still hope come home. Nobody said a word, but I saw June's eyes flick to the empty chair and then back to her plate. Dinner was good, real good. Harold brought his usual over-salted gravy, and Maisie spilled cranberry sauce on the dog. Reese proposed a toast to old men who still know how to carve a turkey. I raised my glass and let them laugh. But when the plates were cleared and the pie was cooling on the windowsill, I slipped into the hallway, opened the closet. There, on the top shelf, sat the Tupperware container I'd set aside earlier that morning. Stuffing, turkey, mashed potatoes, a slice of pumpkin pie, extra whipped cream. I took it outside, walked 3 blocks in the cool dusk air to the last address Lindsay had on file. She wasn't home. Or maybe she was and just didn't answer. I left the container on the porch. No note. She'd know who it was from, because despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the court filings, I still remembered the little girl who used to sneak cookie dough off the counter when Mary wasn't looking. That girl deserved a plate, even if the woman she became didn't deserve a seat. It showed up the following Friday. No return address, just my name, handwritten in blue ink I recognized immediately. Lindsay's handwriting hadn't changed since high school, big loopy L's, too many dots on the I's. I sat on the porch, coffee in one hand, letter in the other, thought about throwing it away, letting the wind take it. But curiosity's a stubborn thing. So I opened it. It wasn't long, a single page, double-sided, neat, no scribbles. She'd taken her time. "Dad," it began, "I don't know what this letter is supposed to do. I'm not writing to win you back, or argue, or beg. I just need to say some things." I kept reading. "I've been angry for a long time, not just at you, at myself, at the world, at the way everything feels harder than it should be. Somewhere along the way, I started believing the lie that if I could control everything, I wouldn't have to feel so lost. I was wrong. I hurt you. I know that. I don't even know how to apologize because sorry feels too small for what I did." I stopped, set the letter down for a moment. The sky was graying, soft with early winter light. I rubbed my eyes, picked it back up. "There are things I still don't agree with, decisions you made, ways you loved Mom more than you ever seemed to love me. But maybe you were just doing your best, and maybe I didn't see it until it was too late." One line hit harder than the rest. "You taught me how to survive, but I never learned how to trust, and I'm starting to think that was my fault, not yours." That one stayed with me. She ended the letter with something simple. "If there's ever a way back, I hope we find it, but I'll understand if we don't. I really will." No signature, just L. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the old dictionary Mary used to use for crossword puzzles. Then I sat there for a long time, not planning, not plotting, just feeling. Because even when a bridge is burned, the river below still remembers how it used to carry something. I didn't buy a tree this year. Didn't drag the old fake one down from the attic either. It felt like too much pretending. Instead, I put a wreath on the front door, set up 2 folding chairs in the den, and laid out a red and white checkered blanket across the floor. That's where we'd open gifts this year. Just me, Theo, and Maisie. Lindsay didn't ask, didn't offer, and I didn't invite her. Some wounds don't close by December. Theo came bounding through the door Christmas morning with a Santa hat and chocolate on his face. Maisie clutched a stuffed unicorn like it was a passport to safety. They didn't ask where their mom was. I didn't offer explanations. We opened presents slowly, thoughtfully. I gave Theo a model train set, the kind with a working whistle and tracks that looped under the coffee table. He gasped like it was gold. Maisie got a music box that played Silent Night when you wound it. I told her it used to be Mary's. Her eyes got wide. This was Grandma's? Yep. She used to play it when she missed her own mom. Maisie nodded solemnly, like she understood. We spent the afternoon building train tracks, sipping hot cocoa, and watching old black-and-white Christmas movies. I burned the ham, but they didn't care. We had grilled cheese and laughed about it. Later, Theo asked, "Papa, are we doing this every year now?" "Doing what?" "Just us, like this." I looked at him. "If you want to." He nodded. "I like it better." He didn't say why. He didn't need to. That night, after they left with June, I sat by the fireplace and turned on the music box again. Silent Night played soft and slow, echoing through the empty house. And for once, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like something new was beginning, not despite the pain, but because of it. Because even broken families can grow new roots. It was late January, one of those gray, bone-cold mornings where the sky forgets how to be blue. I was in line at the hardware store, buying a new light bulb for the porch and a pair of gloves for Harold. His birthday was coming up. I didn't see her at first. She was down by the register, talking with the cashier about some return. Her voice stopped me cold, not because it was loud, because it hadn't changed. Still that same clipped tone, like she was holding something in and didn't know how to let it out. She turned just as I stepped forward. Our eyes met. A pause. "Hi, Dad," she said. Not Frank, not hey, just "Hi, Dad." I nodded. Lindsay. She looked tired, not worn out tired, soul tired, makeup on, but not enough to hide the shadow under her eyes. "You doing okay?" she asked. "I'm fine." She nodded. "How are the kids?" I asked. "They're good," she said. "Theo still talks about the train. Maisie sleeps with that music box every night." That landed harder than she meant it to. We stood there 2 feet apart, strangers with shared DNA. "I got your letter," I said. She shifted. I figured. I read it twice. Silence. She didn't ask what I thought of it. Didn't push. That, more than anything, told me she still didn't know how to face what she'd done. Or maybe she did, and just didn't have the tools. "You need anything?" I asked. She blinked, surprised. "From you?" "From anyone." She shook her head. "I've made my bed, Dad." I nodded again. "Well," I said, stepping forward, "take care of yourself." "You too." That was it. No apology, no hug, no tearful reconciliation. Just 2 people standing in the fluorescent glow of aisle 5, pretending not to be ghosts. I walked out into the cold and sat in my truck for a long time. Because sometimes the deepest heartbreak isn't the slam of a door. It's the quiet recognition that some people you love will always stay out of reach. It was a little after 10 p.m. I was brushing my teeth about to turn in when the phone buzzed. Lindsay's number. I almost didn't answer. But something about the timing, about the gut instinct that whispered this wasn't her, made me pick up. "Hello?" A pause, then a small voice. "Papa?" "Theo." My grip on the phone tightened. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Another pause. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." He was quiet for a moment. I could hear the hum of a dishwasher in the background, maybe the distant sound of Lindsay talking to someone else. "Did you and Mommy stop being family?" The question hit like a freight train. I closed my eyes, leaned back in the kitchen chair, and took a breath. "No," I said softly. "We didn't stop. We just changed." "Because of the money stuff?" "Because of a lot of stuff," I said. "But none of it is your fault." "I know," he whispered. I miss how it used to be." I felt tears start to sting. "I do too, Theo." He sniffled. "I don't want you to be alone on Christmas anymore." "I wasn't alone," I said gently. "You were there. That's what matters." "But Mommy said maybe next year we could all do it together again." That pause hung heavy. I didn't know what to say, because hope, when it's misplaced, can break a child's heart, and silence can too. So I said the only honest thing I could. "We'll see, buddy. We'll see." He didn't push, just whispered, "Okay. I love you, Papa." "I love you too." He hung up. I sat there staring at the floor, because I knew that call hadn't come from Lindsay. It came from a boy trying to stitch together the pieces we tore apart. And it reminded me that no matter how careful I'd been, no matter how many documents I'd filed or locks I'd turned, some legacies still leak through the cracks. I wrote it the morning after Theo called. Not because I expected a response, but because there were things I needed to say, to her, to myself, to the years we lost trying to win the same battle from opposite sides. It took 3 drafts. Here's what I finally mailed. "Lindsay, you once asked me if I ever stopped loving you. The answer has always been no. But I did stop trusting you, and that was harder than I ever imagined. You crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed, not just with money or legal papers, but with memory, with legacy, with the sacred space between father and daughter. You saw me aging and mistook it for weakness. You saw my silence and mistook it for surrender. But I was never silent. I was surviving. I forgive you, not because you've asked or earned it, but because I don't want to carry this anymore. Not into another year, not into another morning. This doesn't mean the past didn't hurt. It means I've decided to stop bleeding from wounds you won't admit to causing. You are still my daughter, but I am no longer your hiding place, your fallback plan, or your silent accomplice. If you ever want a relationship built on truth, on mutual respect, not control, I'm here. But if not, that's okay too. Either way, I'll keep the porch light on for Theo and Maisie, and I'll be okay, because I have finally remembered who I am outside of being your father. Dad." I folded the letter, sealed it, and mailed it with a single stamp. Not certified. Not registered. Just sent. That night, I didn't wait for a reply. I poured a drink, sat in Mary's chair, and turned on the music box one last time, because some endings don't need music, just silence, and the sound of something heavy finally being put down.